Do you know the infamous deal of IBM that Microsoft got was due to Gates' mother having links in IBM? That was the deal which made Bill Gates the youngest billionaire, and he just does nothing. We will tell you more details in a later part of the video. As of August 2022, Gates is ranked by Forbes as the fourth richest person on the planet with a net worth of $111 billion. Most of his wealth was generated from Microsoft. However, he has sold most of his stock and built a diversified portfolio of investments, including large positions in companies like Berkshire Hathaway, Canadian National Railway, and AutoNation. He was the richest person in the world for most of the period between 1995 and 2017. Want to learn more about his life? Watch the full video. We at Business Chronicles tell the stories of extraordinarily successful people. Please subscribe to our channel to help us in making more videos. In 1955, Bill Gates was born in Seattle, Washington. His father, Bill Gates Sr., was a Seattle lawyer, and his mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, was a banker who served on the board of United Way of America and the University of Washington Board of Regents. In his early years, Gates attended Congregational Christian churches with his family. His parents encouraged competition between himself and his two siblings. They would play games such as pickleball and hearts, and there was always a reward for the winner and a penalty for the loser. This nurtured Gates' competitive spirit. His favorite games were Risk and Monopoly. Gates attended Lakeside Prep School where he excelled in math and science. He read plenty of books as a child. However, he was easily bored and withdrawn. When he was in 8th grade, the school bought a teletype Model 33 ASR terminal. Gates was captivated by it and would spend hours of his free time working on it, alongside his childhood friend and later business partner Paul Allen. Gates wrote his first code at age 13 in the computer language BASIC. It was a code that allowed users to play a computer game. He and another friend, Ken Evans, went on to automate the school's class scheduling system. When he was 17, Gates and Allen even formed their first business venture, Trafo Data, which made traffic counters. After graduating from Lakeside in 1973, Gates scored 1590 out of 1600 in his college SATs and was admitted to Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His parents wanted him to study and later become a lawyer. However, Gates wanted to work with computers. While at Harvard, Gates kept in touch with his friend Allen, who was enrolled at Washington State University. Allen studied at the university for 2 years before dropping out and going to Boston to work for Honeywell. It was during one of their engagements that Allen showed Gates an article from the magazine Popular Electronics that discussed the Altair 8800 minicomputer kit. The two were fascinated by the minicomputer and contemplated how it would reach every home in the country, democratizing personal computing. Gates and Allen opined that they could build a software program for the minicomputer. To test whether the minicomputer's manufacturer would be interested in their software, the two called the company and informed its leadership that they were developing a basic program for their device. The manufacturer was Microinstrumentation and Telemetry Systems, or MITS, based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. MITS president Ed Roberts asked the two to come to Albuquerque and present their program to the company. Gates and Allen spent 2 months developing their program, flew to Albuquerque and presented it to MITS, having never run it on any of their computers before. Thankfully, it worked well. MITS entered into a partnership with the two to distribute their interpreter as Altair Basic. It also hired Allen to work for them. Gates would spend many days in Albuquerque before finally dropping out of Harvard in 1975. He never returned to finish his studies. Allen coined the name Microsoft for the new business partnership with Gates. It was a reference to microcomputer and software. They removed the hyphen a year later and registered Microsoft with the Secretary of State of New Mexico in November 1976. That first year, the company made revenues of $16,005. As their partnership with MITS continued, Microsoft grew its team to 13. However, because it was hard to find good programmers in Albuquerque, Gates moved the company to Bellevue, Washington in 1979. MITS collapsed some years later, but by then, Microsoft had already formed partnerships with other computer companies, including Commodore and Apple. In 1979, Microsoft had 25 employees and made $2.5 million in revenue. John Opel, who was CEO of IBM, was also board member of United Way of America, where Bill Gates' mother was also a board member. In 1980, Gates, through his mother, met IBM CEO. Gates first proposed making a basic interpreter for IBM, but then IBM executives mentioned that they wanted an operating system for their new computer. Gates purchased an operating system from a Washington competitor, Seattle Computer Products, refined it for IBM computers, and then sold it to IBM for a fee of $50,000. The operating system was originally called PC-DOS. Ingeniously, Gates did not give IBM the source code for PC-DOS. He instead offered a licensing agreement where IBM would pay Microsoft for copies of the software it sold with its computers. Gates was betting that other computer manufacturers would copy IBM's hardware to make their own personal computers, and would also need operating systems. They did. By then, however, the IBM computers had gotten good market share, and Microsoft's PC-DOS had become the industry standard for operating systems. Gates began selling PC-DOS licenses to other computer manufacturers. In 1981, Microsoft's staff increased to 128 and sales shot up to $16 million. Reincorporating in Washington with himself as president and board chair, while Allen was executive vice president. By 1983, Microsoft had offices in Japan and Great Britain, and one of every 3 computers globally ran on its operating system. It made $55 million in sales that year. In 1985, Microsoft launched Windows 1.0. On May 13, 1986, Microsoft went public at a price of $21 a share. It raised $61 million from the IPO, making Gates a multimillionaire. In 1987, Microsoft acquired Forethought, which developed PowerPoint. In 1989, Microsoft launched Microsoft Office, which contained Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. This became one of its most successful products. In 1990, Microsoft launched Windows 3.0, an operating system with a more enhanced graphic user interface. It sold more than 100,000 copies in its first week. In 1992, it launched Windows 3.1 and sold 3 million copies in its first 2 months. In August 1995, Microsoft released Windows 95 and sold over 1 million copies in 4 days. That year, it also introduced Internet Explorer to Windows after partnering with Spyglass, the company that originally made the browser. Microsoft launched Windows 98 in 1998. It made other notable inventions in the 1990s, including Microsoft Network or MSN, a competitor to AOL, and MSNBC, a 24-hour news station it ran in partnership with NBC. In 1999, the company made $19.7 billion in sales. Microsoft launched Windows XP and the Xbox game console in 2001. In 1992, computer programmers Mark Andreessen and Eric Bina worked at computer research facility National Center for Supercomputing Applications, which was a special unit of University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Both programmers got inspired to develop their own browser from David Thompson, who demonstrated Viola www web browser to the NCSA. In 1993 at NCSA, Mark Andreessen and Eric Bina developed Mosaic web browser. The browser got much popular than existing browsers like Airwise, Viola www, Midas www, and TKwww. In 1994, the founder of computer manufacturing company Silicon Graphics, Jim Clark, contacted Mark Andreessen and presented the idea to create their own commercial web browser. They went on to start a company called Mosaic Communications Corporation, which was later renamed to Netscape Communications Corporation. Netscape was the first private company to create a web browser called Netscape Navigator, and within months, they captured the majority of the emerging World Wide Web market. In 1995, Netscape held a very successful IPO, and it was the largest in Wall Street history at that time. The initial offering was set at $28 per share, which looked like a very bold move for a company which was having no profit at all. The stock peaked at $74.75 per share on its first day before closing the day at $58.25 per share, putting the market cap of the company at around $3 billion. By the end of 1995, Netscape shares reached at around $174. In 1996, Netscape had over 80% of the web browser market share. Microsoft at that time had a $75 billion market cap and dominated the operating system market. They decided to enter the web browser market. Microsoft used its market dominance and packaged Internet Explorer with Windows, thus making many of the new users to use Internet Explorer instead of Netscape Navigator. Netscape revenue came from the sales of compact discs that comes with the browser. For new users, it was convenient to just buy Windows and use Internet Explorer instead of buying Navigator CD separately and installing it on Windows. Internet Explorer slowly was taking over the web browser market. Netscape responded by adding more features. Internet Explorer copied whatever new features Netscape added. In the end, both browsers became more slower and buggier. In the end, Microsoft won the browser war, and Netscape, which was one of the largest companies of the time, disappeared in the history. In 1998, Department of Justice and the Attorneys General of 24 states filed antitrust charges against Microsoft. The charges mention that Microsoft uses its monopoly in operating system market to dominate in the software industry. They gave an example how Internet Explorer was difficult to uninstall and caused the collapse of Internet Explorer's top rival, Netscape Navigator. In 2000, the presiding judge Thomas Penfield Jackson ruled that Microsoft had unlawfully maintained its monopoly by attaching Internet Explorer with Windows. The judge's ruling said that Microsoft had violated the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is the first federal act approved in 1890 that outlawed monopolistic business practices. The judge ruled that Microsoft must be split into two companies. One company will manage and operate the operating system, while the other company will manage Microsoft's software section. Microsoft appealed the decision, and due to Judge Thomas Jackson, talked with media in an off-the-record discussion before his final decision. He was removed, and Colleen Collar-Codley was appointed to preside the case. In 2002, the new judge overturned the split of Microsoft, and Department of Justice settled the case with Microsoft. In 1997, Apple was in serious financial trouble. The company going into bankruptcy seemed inevitable. The board decided to bring back Steve Jobs as CEO of Apple. Steve Jobs, after firing the people on the Apple board who fired Jobs earlier in 1985, he focused on raising money. He went to Bill Gates and made the deal in which Microsoft will invest $150 million in Apple stock, thus giving the lifeline to Apple. Many believe Microsoft's investment in its failing rival Apple and giving lifeline to Apple was a strategic move. Microsoft was stuck in antitrust problems, and the bankruptcy of Apple means more monopoly of Microsoft and more antitrust problems. Both companies agreed to settle all cases, making Microsoft Office and Internet Explorer available for Macintosh users. The Microsoft investment in Apple stock helped Apple to stabilize things, and as per agreement, Microsoft sold its Apple stock in 2003. If Microsoft would not have sold Apple stock, it would have been worth today over $50 billion. Through his private office, Gates funds and promotes companies working to reverse climate change and find solutions for Alzheimer's and dementia. He has funded companies like TerraPower, Carbon Engineering, Impossible Foods, and ResearchGate. Since leaving Microsoft, Gates has dedicated most of his time to philanthropy. Together with his former wife Melinda Gates, he established the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2000. The foundation's goal is to improve equity around the world. Since 2000, the foundation has disbursed more than $1 billion in college scholarships, donated more than $10 billion to assist in vaccine research in poor countries, and committed over $300 million to support farmers in Africa and Asia. The foundation supports public health projects against diseases like AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. It was instrumental in eradicating polio from most of the world, having donated $5.5 billion toward eradication efforts, and also donated $1.75 billion to help fight COVID-19. The foundation also works with global organizations to support public education, family planning, disaster relief, and access to water, sanitation, and hygiene products. It has donated tens of millions to universities like Stanford, Harvard, MIT, and Carnegie Mellon University. In 2010, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, alongside Warren Buffett, created the Giving Pledge. It committed the world's richest people to donate a majority of their wealth to philanthropy. Gates has donated more than $57 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation since 2000. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016 by President Barack Obama for his philanthropic efforts. Bill Gates' mother played a very important role in his success. The meeting with the IBM CEO was the big break that any company look into. Gates used the opportunity and grabbed the deal, which helped Gates to make Microsoft the biggest software company in the world. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this.